Hey there, and thank you for tapping into this episode of Bandwidth Coast to Coast. The day that this episode is being released is an anniversary. Not one that is really very happy, but one in which we all had a collective trauma. Something that might get lost in today's talking about Afghanistan and the results of it, the Patriot Act, is that we all went through a collective trauma that day, so long as you were conscious for it. Many of us were shocked by what happened, others confused, others terrorized. But what happened was a 3-2 turn. Shakespeare, in his infinite wisdom, would set up so that the stages of his plays would all of a sudden have a sudden shift, in which the tone and tenor of the play would flip and everything would turn on its head. 9/11, everything turned on its head. For some of us, though, if you were living in one of the areas that were affected, such as New York City, that trauma was much more real, much more up close, much more scary. The thing about trauma, if you've ever really experienced it, is that it's overwhelming. It's consuming. You can't escape it. Whether it's something at home, a car accident, war, it encompasses every fiber of your being, and it's as if you're drowning. I don't want that to get lost in today. There was a trauma that happened, one that we're still reeling with, one that we're still being affected by, one that we're still legislating. So what I wanted to do was reissue this episode. I started this whole series with this interview for a reason. I think that 9/11 was an entire shift in our collective consciousness as a country and how we affect the world. It was a retelling of our story, a manufacturing of our intent, but what it was to those that on the ground was a day that shook their life. A day that, as Rowan puts, felt too big to panic. So, without further ado, and something that's going to be far better being told from him, I'm going to intro into the story of Rowan Price and his experience being blocks from the towers on 9/11 and what that meant, what that felt like. Something that I think we forget, what life before internet was, and how you can be completely cut out from it. Seeing people covered in soot, walking down the street so shook and shocked with trauma that they look like zombies. Watching people, like confetti, jump out of buildings, and being completely confused as what was happening. As we ponder what happened, and as we try to make a path forward through this new viral world, I think we should try to think back on what the traumas of today are affecting us, legislating us, changing us, having effects on our national zeitgeist. But most importantly, I think we should move back into the past, listen to those that were there, and try to find a path forward. One that encompasses it all and heals instead of just reacting. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoy. Talk to you all soon. Real quick before the episode starts, if you'd like to listen to us on your streaming platform of choice, donate to the show, sign up for our mailing list, visit us at bandwidthpodcast.com. And of course, if you like what you hear, follow, comment, or subscribe to the pod from wherever you're listening. Enjoy! Okay. Would you mind just introducing yourself as however you would like? I'm gonna cut the clip up, so however you like to make your introduction. Just would you mind just doing that really quick
Not
to
at
have
all.
that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name is Rowan, and I work with experts and entrepreneurs who are kind of driven by expertise and usually engaged in some kind of consulting or software business.
That's what you do, but who are you?
Um, I am a contrarian, kind of free-spirited pretty good natured human being, from planet Earth.
I like that. I like that a lot.
It's true. I think it's all true.
I think it's true.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah, I
How
think
would you
it's.
define contrarian?
Um, I guess like willing. I guess I just willing to set yourself against whatever's there. Um, so I think a fence can be contrarian. The root of a tree can be contrarian.
Hmm.
Can resist gravity or mud flows. So it's just like finding a way to like hack whatever's coming or whatever. I mean, classically, like whatever idea gets thrown at you, it's the willingness and I guess ability, cultivated ability to change it or stop it.
But it's not arbitrary, right? Like you wouldn't just say like arbitrarily that you enjoy fighting the norm, or does it have to be targeted and virtuous?
I mean, that's definitely like one sense of the meaning of the word. It's the way it's used derogatorily in that sense of reflexive disagreement. But no, I think that's not how I was describing myself. I think I was trying to make myself look better than that, and
And I'm
and so
just trying to get you comfortable. So whatever
yeah,
works.
no, it's working great. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's I think it has to be based in your understanding of what's true and what's morally right, and otherwise
Hmm.
it's BS. It's not really being contrarian. It's just I don't know. It's a lot of things disagreeable. Um,
So targeted and virtuous disagreeability.
yeah, I like that. Targeted and virtuous disagreeability. Yeah.
You know, when I think of like the day of 9/11, I was young
Mm-hmm.
and I think of just how I remember the look on like parents' faces at school when they were coming to take their kids out of the day early.
Yeah.
And I just remember them looking distraught. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I've seen that look. I saw that look on people's faces because my parents and like my strained upbringing. So I had understood what to see somebody to really, like, see an adult really distraught or see someone who was older really distraught. It wasn't something that I hadn't seen before, but it was something that I'd never seen in anyone outside the house.
Yeah.
So to see these people like openly in public, just like shook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that really stuck with me. Um, and it's something that I would say like I started seeing it again with COVID, right? I started like going. I remember going to the grocery store when it was
Yes.
coming out and like walking through the aisles, and like I would see some people that were just running to get stuff, and I would see other people that look like zombies and just look like I don't know what to do, you
Yeah.
know. And I wonder what that was like for you. So
Mm-hmm.
you lived in Manhattan when this happened, right? In
I did.
2001.
I did. Yeah.
So I want you to like think about your life in June of 2001.
Mm-hmm.
What was your normal waking up cycle?
I would wake up between 8 and 10 in the morning on pretty much every day, including weekdays.
I like that.
Yeah, my workplace. I worked in like the classic.com digital agency, um, and I think in that era, especially digital agencies and tech startups, uh, starting the workday at 11 was not uncommon.
Hmm. So
So
like company wide.
company wide, yeah, you could
Huh.
you could work either 9 to 5 or 11 to 7. There's a lot of freedom around that. So yeah, and I at the time I lived on Orchard and Stanton, which is a block off of Houston, which is
Like
by
if I'm looking at Manhattan as a knife, like an upside down butter knife, where are you on
right.
the butter knife?
You're a little bit towards the serrated edge, and about 4/5 towards the bottom, I think.
Okay, and the serrated edge is the east side of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so if
Yeah,
upside down butter knife,
yeah, upside down bottom knife. Go, because I think
you're like a third
it's
from
like
the
upside down.
bottom on the east side.
That's about that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, so and then I would walk across that was the Lower East Side.
What was your breakfast?
Breakfast, there was an Israeli cafe. So not so much a Jewish cafe, but an Israeli cafe.
Yeah.
Um, and they just made really good like French pastries and coffee. So
So that was a daily
it
ritual.
was a daily ritual. There was Russ and Daughters about a block away, which is a kind of like landmark Jewish deli
Hmm.
from the old days that hasn't really changed, and just amazing bagels. And so that was right there too. Um,
I was
some
wondering if you had bagels and where you were getting them from. That was actually I was curious.
bagels and
Yeah.
schmears, yeah, right around the
Hmm.
corner. Russ and Daughters. Um, yeah, that was it for the most part. It was always something off the street because that was just. I mean, there lots of. If I missed either one of those, I would walk through Nolita and then walk through Chinatown / Little Italy, which are kind of the same thing now, and to Soho, which is where my office was. So there's lots of places to eat on the street.
Hmm.
Bagels usually.
Okay, so then you got it. You got a bagel. I'm gonna go with the bagel. You got a
Sure.
bagel, and you walked to the office. Did you walk to your office? Did you take the subway?
I usually walked. Every now and then I'd grab a cab if I was running late for a meeting or something, but I usually walked. Yeah.
Like 20-minute walk.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
No, that's nice.
15-minute walk. Yeah, it was good.
Okay, so you walked to work, and I wouldn't imagine you listened to music, did you?
No, I did. Music was free at that time. There was a thing called Napster. The original
Right.
Napster made all music free for about a year, about 8 months, and yeah, I had an MP3 player and hit earbuds. And, yeah,
Okay. All right. So you were the MP3 Napster. This is really circa 2001. I like it.
yeah.
So you're listening to some music, and
Are
what
you
do you do?
setting
So you go to
this?
work.
Are you setting the stage for the morning of 9/11?
I'm setting the stage for what your life was like. I'm curious. I'm trying
Okay,
to
yeah.
get you.
So
I'm
so
using
yeah,
the
just
method
in
of.
general.
I'm kind of
Okay.
hacking the method of Loki to get you in the mindset to
Okay.
actualize more of the day.
Okay. Cool. Great. Yeah. So I would usually not be in a rush. Sometimes I was in a rush, as I referenced a second ago, but usually it was not so much when you started as what you did. So um,
So what would you do? Is you roll into the office and what would you do? You were coding. You were
um,
running meetings. What were you doing? What was your day? And how stressful was it?
sometimes it was stressful because we had this thing where we would meet these huge project deadlines. Everything was kind of so there was no um, the programming language libraries weren't finished yet. So you just kind of made shit up. Like PHP, for example, like it was like PHP 3.0 or 2.6 or something. And it was like a bunch of stuff just wasn't done with the language. So you kind of like couldn't really use it for everything, but you could use it for like some stuff. Then you'd
Right.
use Perl. And then
Right.
you
Bring
use
something
like
else under
different
the
stuff.
table. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like what work was like. I think for people trying to make software, for people trying to make websites, complex websites, it was haphazard and random and pretty
Very
chaotic.
hacky.
It was
Yeah.
super hacky. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So my day was I'd get in there and I was really into this game called Unreal Tournament, which was one of the first
Oh, yeah. I was really into that too.
multiplayer FPS games.
Yeah, it was the first Unreal Engine, right?
Yeah, it was the first one, and it was like for me, I think it was one of the first two that were like huge that people played like all over the world with each other simultaneously, which is like normal now. But really back then, mostly people who played that were some college kids, but mostly it was people that worked at like tech startups and visual because we're the only ones that had T1 like super fast
Mm-hmm.
connections and like really nice computers. And no one could do it on a laptop back then. You had to have a desktop. So we had like nice computers. And there were 300 people at my agency. So there was like a Toronto team, a San Francisco team, and a New York team that we would battle each other in Unreal Tournament, like
That's really cool.
team capture the flag kind of stuff.
That's great.
And that was part of my day. I mean, it wasn't always how I started my day. Usually it was more like the afternoon or evening, but sometimes. Yeah, and I did. I was like I started as like a front end developer, but then I started doing ASP programming, and then I started doing like information architecture, just like wireframing and stuff like that. So it's just basic like web development design stuff.
Yeah, and back in the day, so you were,
Classic.
and well, startups usually have a culture of wearing multiple hats, but back then, I mean, that was probably a requirement, especially with all the hacking and everything.
Yeah, like we hadn't really defined, like there was no term UX design that
I
didn't
was gonna
exist.
say there wasn't a UX designer. I was
There was
just
a
gonna say that actually.
there was like an information architect and a which was more like a traditional like workflow diagrammer,
Yeah,
and then there
or a data guy.
our data guy too, yeah. And then there was web designers and web developers and project managers, and like we just all figured it out together. I think that's how
That's
UX
great.
design worked.
Yeah, it's how it should work, anyways.
Yeah, true.
So okay, so then at night, were you mostly like living up? What was your? How let me rephrase this because I want to frame my question properly. What was your typical way of getting the New York experience?
Right. Well, I don't know. There was just a lot of places right around where I lived where there were just cool, cool spots to just kind of poke around and hang out. And I mean, there were dozens of them. So, it was kind of just, yeah, I guess connecting with people that had lived there, live there. And
So connecting with people in bars and cafes.
yeah, I mean, I was in an office full of like 150 people that were between I was I think 26 at the time, so there was about 150 people within a few years of that age range. So that was the main thing. And then, yeah, like in my neighborhood, in the Lower East Side, there were certain people you'd recognize and see repeatedly. And I just knew like randomly other people from before I moved to New York that lived in the area.
The thing that I admittedly haven't spent nearly enough time in New York City, but I've been there a few times for work. But the thing that struck me was how much of almost a neighborhood feel you get when you live in a block for long enough,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
like
totally.
I didn't understand. Someone told me this that lived in New York when I was there once, and I didn't understand that until like living here in San Diego, and I live on one of the beaches, and I'm starting to see like the same people over and over again, like when I'm walking the
Mm,
dog and stuff, and they'll like wave to me, and like before you know it, you're like I haven't started having conversations with people, but in New York City where you're closer, you know what I mean,
yeah,
and you're brushing up against each other, I can understand that more where you just kind of sees people, and it's just, I mean, like, hey, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And it's an interesting thing of a mega city to get something like that, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think there are various levels to which that happens based on how you like structure your life. Because you can certainly spend a lot of your time outside of your neighborhood. And I did actually, because I had just various destinations um, uptown and, in Brooklyn and so on. My my partner at the time was originally from Brooklyn,
Mm.
and we were both really into art, and she'd been an art student. So I remember at one point after I after I finagled my way into getting fired on purpose so I could collect bonus 9/11 unemployment insurance, like extended,
Okay.
which I used to go live in Hawaii. Um, I we
That's
went to I went to the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We went 30 days in a row every single day. We said we'll
that's
never have
awesome.
this opportunity to do this, and we'd been there a bunch of times, and we'd seen that we'd never been able to really get it, and felt frustrated, and we also felt that we needed to start from prehistory to the modern day, which is what that museum gives you the opportunity to
Hmm.
do. You can look at art from every time period in every part of the world, and you can work your way through time. And so we did that, and yeah, we a few hours a day. for 3 or 4 hours a day. And, that certainly took me out of my neighborhood, but it was worth it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
I really enjoyed hearing that. I didn't know that about the Met either.
Yeah,
The
it's it's
timeline thing.
it's a spectacular collection or set of collections. It's pretty impressive. There's
So
the
when you were living in New York, you went to the Catskills too, where you are now, the
yeah
area. Yeah.
yeah yeah we I had my car, which I'd driven out from California, which is where I'd moved from. I parked it in Poughkeepsie, which is where Vassar is, which is upstate, and you can take the train from Grand Central Station, and it's like an hour and 20 minutes or something. So that kind of sets you, as opposed to trying to park your car in Manhattan if you're not rich, which I wasn't. So that was like, $40 a month in parking lot fee. So I just pick it up in Poughkeepsie and Poughkeepsie. I used to call it Poughkeepsie for fun. And just that's like a launch pad into the Catskills. It's like right there, really close, right across the river.
I love your chutzpah. Like in the time that we've been talking, you've already mentioned that you lived in California, New York City, and Hawaii. And
Yeah, that
the
was a
modes of how
highly
you do it is
transient.
great.
That was a transient, right? Yeah, right. That I did move about with chutzpah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. I enjoy hearing it. Um, okay, so you're no stranger to quick movements, it seems like, or paradigm changes.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you live it.
Some
uh,
yeah, I'm not probably not as like impressive as you're making me out to be. But yeah, I think I have experienced it. Whether I've thrived or dived, I think is another question. But
oh,
yes.
I and take this to heart. I think that you are all the more interesting than I'm even expressing in this conversation. I just pull out one obscure literature reference, then you're going to have a whole fractal dive of information that I'm just never going to have heard of before. Um, amongst other greater
Sometimes.
attributes that you have, Mr. Rowan.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
We all have our
This is
poor
a very
moments, but
interesting interview, actually. Speaking of which,
oh, well, thank you.
yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
me too.
I'm happy to hear that. I was going to ask. Uh, um, okay, so you went to the Catskills. You would
Yeah,
go occasionally, right? Like you mentioned that you would go like on vacation and whatnot, just kind of hike and boop around.
it's just weekend,
Yeah.
just chill out, just when the weather was nice. It's just
Mm,
the city's kind of like oppressive after a bit, so you just yeah,
that's
it's kind
great.
of a way to escape for a little bit.
Um, okay, so you're let me get this. So you're living in the Lower East Side. You're living and working very close to each other. It seems like you're really getting into the New York City culture of just knowing it, seeing everybody and walking around and kind of having that Seinfeld life, right? Uh, very like
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I was ever like a native like that because that they to me feel like they're like true like natives, and I think I was more like a visitor. But yeah,
You're
I
very
mean, I
transient, yeah, I know.
was
But you take on
transient.
the culture in the way that I would say that it's similar. I'm trying to like fill like glass to understand like a good picture, and I feel like that's a good one. You're moving around a lot. You're most of what
Sure.
you're doing is moving and talking to people, and you're kind of enjoying like
Yeah.
the outer loudness that is that much of a concrete jungle.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so what was that like September 12th?
Uh,
Was there any of that? Was there any of the walking around, going to
oh,
cafes, seeing people?
no, 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 no. There was nothing like that. The only place you would go is to donate blood at the hospital, maybe to go like get emergency supplies.
So
But there's
September
no,
10th, you're going and get a bagel on your way to work.
yeah, it's sunny
September
out
12th, the only place that you can go is to go donate blood.
pretty much, or the pharmacy. Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. What was the
That's
look
pretty
on
much it.
people's faces? Did you see anybody? Was there anybody on the street?
Yes, there was a lot of people out to donate blood. There was much more blood than they can accept. They were having to turn people away. There are long lines of people being turned away because it was the only thing you could do. There was no internet. There was no TV. There was no radio. There was radio. There was like emergency radio, but there was really like There was no work. There was no
So
leaving.
you didn't have any internet?
Did not have any internet.
Why is that?
Um, because my provider's network was down.
Hmm.
So my provider was out. I can't even remember what my provider was, but it was out. It was out for 48 hours.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe a little
Cell
bit
phone
less
didn't
than
work?
that. I
Did you
think
have
it
a cell
came.
phone?
Some people. I did have a cell phone. I think it was out. Yeah, I had a track phone, a track flip phone. I think like a razor or something. Um, it's definitely services out of 9/11. I can't remember. I can't remember if it came back on the 12th or not.
Interesting. And the only there no television.
There was no television. They got it back at some point. I can't remember if it was. I think it was the next day. I think it was the 12th, and it was. Yeah, it was just the news channels, basically. That
Wow.
was all there was. This is the broadcast news channels. Yeah. Now there might have been different media experiences. I imagine so. I imagine some people had providers that stayed up, and yeah.
How
But that
far
was
from
my
where you?
experience. I felt cut off. What's that?
Oh, I mean that's very cut off.
Yeah.
Um, was there like if you looked outside your window, would you be able to see people walking around?
Um. Yes. Yes, because people actually did need to go to the pharmacy, and then it's a certain point stores started to reopen, and people needed to get food.
So your bagel place wasn't open, or your pastry
Um,
place?
I don't think the bagel place was open. The Israeli cafe, I think they opened after a few days. There were like grocery stores and corner stores that opened up though. There was a corner store across from my apartment building. So
What did you do in that? From what did you do on September 12th? I want to go back, but I'm curious as to what you did on September 12th.
I sat in my apartment and waited for the TV to come on, and I think I was able to make phone calls. So I was able to call I called my parents and one of my siblings, I think. And we started to be able to call people at a certain point. So we did a bunch of calls and we kind of like made plans and just planned on we were scheming, trying to figure out how to get off the island. So we were like, that was what a lot of it was. We figured out that all the bridges were closed and all the tunnels were closed, but it took us a while to piece it together. So we were trying to like figure out how to get off basically because we didn't really know what was next.
Did you feel panicked?
I was in shock. I didn't feel panic. I think I was in shock, and for some reason I didn't panic. It felt like too big to panic.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I don't think I did panic. Some people did. A
Sure.
lot of people didn't though, actually.
Hmm. What
Um,
um what was your plan to get off the island? You
my
just got off the phone
plan,
with your sister, your parents.
yeah, like we were like I think one idea we had was to go down to the docks and see if there are any like boats that we're gonna cross to like Jersey or whatever. um, or Long Island. But the plan was to get up to um, my my partner's aunt's house. She lived up in the Catskills, and so she lived out in the country. It was like safe, it was secure, and that's what we did. But we didn't do it until I believe September. It was either the 14th or the 15th. Might have been the 14th. And at that point, they opened up the George Washington Bridge, which is how you get up to the Catskills. So you're able to leave the island.
How did you get across the bridge?
Just the normal way, just driving. I mean, just took the normal route and drove. Um, yeah, that was pretty straightforward. That part.
Okay. So September 10th, you're getting a bagel on your way into the office.
Mm-hmm.
September 15th, you're driving across the George Washington Bridge to go hide in the mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty
Interesting.
much. Yeah.
So what was, I believe like the tower, first tower got hit at like 8 something in the morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what were you doing? Were you even awake when it first happened?
Um, I was like half awake, and believe I was in bed still when the first one hit, and it woke me up.
The sound of it
And
hitting?
yeah, yeah, the sound of it hitting, you could hear it. You could hear well, I think either that or just the sound of the plane, because the plane was
What did
really
it sound like?
loud. It sounded like a big, just yeah, it sounded like a loud like a loud jet engine that was stressed or strained, kind of more so than you.
Throttling,
Yeah, maybe yeah, just more so than you might expect from a loud
almost
jet.
like a big fan.
There was like that. There was a whooshing sound or a fan sound that I remember from some point that day. I'm not exactly sure when, but at that point, yeah, it was like after it collided, it wasn't loud enough for me to hear from my apartment, so I didn't really know what was going on. So I woke
So
up.
you heard like a jet engine screech almost
I heard like like a super loud jet
roar.
engine doing something, and then like a boom, but I didn't really know what it was because it didn't make sense to me. So I wasn't really sure what it was. I just heard these random noises basically.
Hmm.
Part of that was, just waking up, but part of it was just it just didn't make sense. You're like, what would that be? Why would that happen where I am? You know?
What did you do next?
Um, I got up for a little bit and I just ignored it and did a couple things, I think, to get ready. And then I heard like people shrill voices on the street down below. I was about 4 stories up off of Orchard, and I just looked down, and then people seemed to be walking faster than normal. And I was like, "What's going on?" So I just ran downstairs and just to go to work. That was and
So you're going in early that day because of this?
yeah, I was curious what was going on. So maybe I got downstairs a little bit after 9, and some days I went in at that time, so it wasn't that weird. But yeah, so as I went along the way after a couple blocks, I just got this vantage point. I came around a corner, around a tree in a corner, and the sky opened up, and I saw the plane stuck into the building, and I saw the smoke, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And I didn't know, but other people had been up maybe since it hit. So this maybe it was already 45 minutes, and they'd already figured out exactly what was going on. I didn't know, but there were people already reacting emotionally to it. Like they'd been informed, they'd had time to think about it, they'd had time to talk about it with other people on the street, and they were already in panic mode or flight mode or anger mode. And I was like, what's going on? So
Interesting. So as you're walking, I want to understand the imagery real quick. So you're walking in after this is happening, and there's a clearing in the buildings, and you could
mhm.
see the trade center with the
Yeah,
tail of it out.
yeah,
Wow.
yep,
Wow. I it's easy for me to imagine like where the sky clears up, when you're walking in a downtown area,
hmm,
especially Manhattan. I mean, Manhattan is, I don't know, many places in the world like that. Maybe like outside of Asia, but like seeing the cloud or like the sky open up and seeing blue with the backdrop of smoke and a plane coming out of it. I mean, it's kind of making my thoughts kind of stop at it for a moment.
mm.
That's interesting. Okay, so you see this. What was your first reaction when you saw that? Did you stop and stare?
I did. I stopped and stared at it. I thought it was. spectacular in a really scary way. I wasn't really. My first thought was that this is some kind of freak accident. It's not. It's terrible, but it's not like no idea of the scope of it. Like none. You couldn't even conceive of it being this act of like terrorism, essentially.
So before we go any further, on September 11th, when did you get your first jolt of adrenaline? What caused it? Was it waking up and hearing the jet engine?
No, it was when I realized from other people's reactions finally that it hadn't been a terrorist attack. That's what gave me the jolt of adrenaline. Before that, it
Interesting.
was just a random plane that randomly crashed into the World Trade Center, but a building.
Right.
Or it wasn't really that. It was like I don't know what's going on. I'm
Right.
not sure. That's what it
Right.
was.
I mean, that's a really foreign experience,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when did you when what person initiated that response?
There was a van that belonged to the New York NYFD, the New York Fire Department. So like a van, not a fire truck. And the van had, it had the markings of the fire department. So red, and it was open in the back, and there were about 6 firemen in it. And I saw that driving down the road, and they had a big speaker in the back, and they were playing a Frank Sinatra song about New York. The classic one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the title
New
isn't
York. Yeah, I
exactly.
think it's just called New York, New York.
I think it's just called New York, New York. So they're playing New York, New York, and there's this guy walking down the street with like a tank top, and he didn't look like the kind of guy that would normally be carrying a flag, but he was carrying a huge American flag. And he gave him this kind of salute, like he raised his arm and gave him a salute, and they saluted him back. And then I started hearing all these ambulances, like in the distance, like lots of them. And then that was the first inkling that I thought something like foul play was involved, just by seeing that reaction. And I stopped to talk to someone, and they weren't really sure. And then I passed someone else when I got into Little Italy. And I'm not saying this is part of the Little Italy, but just geographically, that was about another few blocks. And they said, I heard them, one saying to another, we should just go over there and end this and drop a bunch of eggs. You just drop a bunch of eggs all over the Middle East. He meant nuclear bombs. He was like, this is enough. We're done. We're just going to end this. And then I realized, and then at that point, lots of people I heard terrorist attack. So then I knew, and then I booked it to the office. Then I went straight to the office. A few remaining blocks.
Wow.
Just kind of picked it up from the street, just random stuff on the street.
Interesting. Drop a bunch of eggs.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a very common response. Okay, so now I would imagine running to the office because you had a roof, right? Did you go there to the roof of your office first?
Um, I went there because I really wanted to know what was going on, and that was where I thought I could find people that I would trust the most to figure out what was going on and to figure out what to do. It felt like the safe thing to do. Because at this point I still wasn't sure what was going on. I just knew that there was something wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was a terrorist attack. So I I didn't necessarily feel like it was safer though. Um,
Hmm.
it was closer than my apartment was to where the plane had hit. And at this point, no one had any idea that the building was going to come down. It was just a plane in the building. So it was a bad thing, but it wasn't that scary. It was just like really shocking, basically. It's when the
Hmm.
building came down that it got really scary.
Describe that.
I was standing on the roof of my office. So it was in between Broadway and Grand, about a block north of Canal Street. And the office building was one of these old Soho warehouses that spans the whole city block, kind of narrow and 4 or 5 stories. And that's where we my company rented the whole building. And so we had access to the roof, and the roof was kind of like a hangout area. And so I run up on the roof, and I'm with one of my colleagues there, um, this woman named Nicole. And Nicole and I were like, what? We were just to each other. We were like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? And this is so scary. And then we were just looking at it. We were just staring at it. We're standing next to each other. And it started, we could see the top start to fall a little bit and a little bit more. And then the whole thing just started to come down. It was, we didn't know if there was a bomb. Most people thought a bomb had been set off for that to happen. They didn't realize that the plane was a de facto bomb. No idea of that. So it seemed like it was a huge bombing. And, it would have been conceivable, if you don't know much about war and war technology, to believe that someone had set off a small nuclear bomb. I mean, it was like this huge thing being exploded. So everyone just kind of ran for the door to go off the roof. It was like that was a true moment of panic. And then, yeah,
Because you saw the ring of like explosion and the ring of force that just kind of came out.
Um,
So you
I,
see like it blows up and it starts collapsing down, and you guys all just think something happened. And you run to the door.
yeah, I mean, there's dust coming up, so it's forming this huge cloud, and I think it probably just
I see what you're
evoked
saying now.
explosion. So it didn't. That's probably the thing that most evokes explosion. Now you could barely make out people jumping off beforehand, from where I stood, but it was almost, that was something I don't think I really could process. I thought at first, I thought it was rocks or like objects falling off the top. And I realized later that in my mind, the top was crumbling really slowly and it took a long time for the whole thing to come down. But really, it was just people jumping off. Mm-hmm. And then it came down, which was pretty intense to realize.
Where were you when you realized that?
I think I was in Hawaii by that time. I think I was gone. It took me a long time to realize that.
And that's probably what, 6 months later?
Yeah.
Can you recall that image? Like, was it like that where you were like, "Oh my God, I now understand what happened"? And how did you process that? I'm just curious how you processed that. That's really what I'm asking.
I had pre-processed it because I had heard about that happening, and I had thought to myself that, what this was kind of like a maybe semi-manufactured trope that was going around the media to try to bolster morale. But I had thought to myself that these people at least had a choice, and they took their choice. Rather than burning alive, they decided to, fly off this massive building. And so in that last moment, they exercised a little bit of choice, and kind of a horrifying choice, of course. Some people chose to do nothing and almost made it, apparently, but I don't think anyone actually made it when the whole building collapsed.
Had the second plane already hit at this point?
Yeah.
Did you see
the
that?
second plane had already hit. I missed that for some reason. I think I was in the office. I can't remember the sequence.
How did you find out about that?
Just by going up to the roof and people talking about it. Like once it was two planes, yeah, it became like an instant. Like what we were doing is just trying to accumulate all the information we could, and so that was, I found out about that from my office mates.
When did you first go to the internet?
I believe I had internet access the
that day?
night
That day?
that day.
When did you first go to the internet that day?
I can't remember.
Do you
I can't.
remember going to the internet that day?
No, I
Okay.
don't.
Do you remember getting any media that day?
No, I don't remember getting any media that day at all. I mean, the
Do
morning
you
paper had already been delivered, but
do you
nothing about.
suspect that you did get any media that day?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible,
Okay.
and I'm just blanking it out because I was
It's probably
shocked.
shock.
It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah. When did you find out about the other planes that day?
Oh, I found out in the evening, I guess, but probably through word of mouth. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Probably the evening, and there were police stationed throughout the city, so there was information being circulated that way. There were tanks. There was a tank on my street corner, on the corner of Stanton and Houston.
When
So if
did you notice that getting there?
I noticed it the first day. So what I did, I noticed it on September 11th. That after, I think they came that evening. Maybe they came the next day. But I was outside because I wanted to periodically walk around and see what's going on, talk to people. So I saw it as soon as it was up. I think it was probably the next day, next morning.
Okay. That's interesting. Man, what a shock. It's also so foreign to think about living before having the internet in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I could very much easily suspect that I would get a notification telling me what's going on if there was an attack of this magnitude that was occurring, from
Yeah.
my phone provider. And it'd be, you know what I mean? A text message, right? Let alone going on Twitter or whatever bullshit. Um, that's
Yeah.
interesting. The reflex of that was why I was asking if you checked the news because I was curious is if it was even a reflex or it doesn't seem as it was.
It wasn't really a reflex to check the news on my phone. I
Well, you
did
didn't have a
have
phone. You didn't have a phone that was capable of internet like that, did you? And if you did, I mean,
I did in
was that even
Hawaii. I did have a phone with a data connection in Hawaii, and it was like a really simple phone. It had like just like a really crude native browser,
right?
and I remember checking the Blazer scores on it.
Nice.
It was like
Yeah,
the
those
one thing I could
Nokias.
do.
Those
It-
Nokias around that time had like really nice little internet native
yeah,
browsers. Real
it was it
simple,
was a it
real
was a it
horrible to
wasn't
use,
nice like
but
that. What's that?
oh no, they were horrible to use. No, they wasn't.
Yeah,
But it was like so cool at the time where it's like, oh my god, dude, I'm going on the internet.
yeah, totally.
Um, okay, so when did you leave the office? And
Mm,
how did you eat lunch that day? Let me go with that first. Did you eat breakfast and what did you eat for lunch?
I didn't eat breakfast, and I do not believe I ate lunch. Pretty sure I didn't eat either one.
When
That
did
was
you
my
leave?
approach.
When did you leave the building? So
I left the
the
building
tower
at
falls. Did you leave the building then?
about 11 o'clock. So I stayed for a little bit to try to get as much info as I could. I called my partner in the apartment, and I just debriefed everything to her, and then was like, okay, I'm going to be over there in a little bit. And I just basically ran back there. I just got a little bit more information. I'm not sure what else I did. There was a few people I wanted to talk to before I left, just to make sure I had all of my points of information and communication set up. I think we were trying each other's phones and they weren't working.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
but yeah, I think I was there for about an hour, and then I went back maybe 45 minutes, and I rushed back to my apartment.
And then did you leave your apartment after that?
Yeah, I left my not for a while. I left my apartment in the evening just to walk around and see what was going on. Maybe once or twice. That's probably the first time I left, just a recon mission.
Hmm. When did the military start shutting everything down?
It wasn't until the next day because they just weren't there. So it was chaos. The day of, the rest of the day was like basically people were setting up ways to help each other just organically, kind of anarchistically, essentially, anarchically. And
What do those look like?
they looked like information tables, food tables, water tables, first aid tables set up on the sidewalk, um, set up at intersections, in empty lots, that kind of thing.
Regular people.
Regular people, just neighborhood people, just, yeah, volunteer based, spontaneous volunteership, essentially.
Hmm. I never heard that before.
Yeah, I saw a few tables like that. It's just people had just set them up and just started because it was like, imagine like by the time noon hits, you've already figured out what's going on and you've already been in shock. And then you're like, okay, we're just sitting here with no input. There's no cable news feed. So let's go outside. There's no internet. See, again, I'm not sure that there was no internet, but for me, there wasn't. But maybe for a lot of people, it was just like, let's go do something. Let's do something, figure something
Right.
out.
So what was the rest of that? You said it was chaos. Like what was the so from noon until you have your did you eat that day?
I think in the evening I ate like crackers or something from my shelf, but nothing substantial. No.
Okay, so from noon until you had a half a sleeve of saltines,
Right.
what were you doing? And um I want to know what you were doing, but I want to more so know what the energy of the street was like
Mm.
there's tables around. I see the tables. Are there
Hmm.
people coming to them? Are there people just walking around aimlessly? What is the beat of the street?
The beat is confusion mostly. There were definitely people coming to the tables. The tables I remember had water. That was like one of the big features. So there was water, um, and lots of people needed it. And it was kind of like de facto first aid. I think mostly it was like, you need to go to the hospital. You just need to like have the
Stop.
interaction with another human.
Right. Clean up your scrapes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people wandering around, just covered in dust and shocked, and they were all over the place, and they were like zombies, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. So some of them would just wander up to these tables, and they would be given water, and they would be like told like, okay, wait here, or there's a hospital up here. Go 4 blocks and take a right. Um, that
So you're
kind of
just
thing.
seeing people in like everyday clothes, suits,
A lot of people in suits because
with dust,
that's this
covered in dust.
the common attire by the trade center. Yeah, exactly, covered in dust. A lot of people in suits.
How far of a walk are you from the trade center?
Um, my office is about 10 minutes, 8 minutes,
Wow.
and yeah, my apartment's probably like 25 minutes, 20 minutes, something like
Wow.
that.
So a lot of people just aimlessly walking.
Yeah,
A lot of other what are the people in your neighborhood doing? Are they in the street or are they in their apartments?
I think most of them are in their apartments, but as I was stepping out periodically to try to figure out what was going on, talking to other people, um, maybe going. I had believed the corner stores might have been open. Actually, I think they just stayed open. That's the thing. There was no. It wasn't like with COVID lockdowns where there was legislation or executive mandates like controlling stuff like that. It was the first day, so it was just you just did whatever you wanted. Basically, I'm sure anyone
Hmm.
probably could have opened it if they wanted to.
But mostly it was just people helping everyone else and managing the shock.
That was definitely like the prevailing thing, and just kind of lots of confusion. And some people were emoting a lot, some people weren't, some people were
Did you
angry.
witness any anger?
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned, I saw the guys wanted immediately like, we're gonna drop some eggs. Um, witnessed a lot of anger, like especially the next day. Like most of the shopkeepers in the Lower East Side at that time were, not most of them, but a substantial number of them and a substantial number of taxi drivers were people of um, Middle Eastern descent and or of you know pot, uh, wearing Muslim clothing. So whether or not they were Muslims or from the Middle East, I don't know. But so there's a lot of people that definitely um, became the instant target of anger, and you can almost kind of feel it.
Did you witness any of that?
Yeah, I witnessed the hostility. I didn't witness any like direct acts of violence though, but I witnessed them. No, I did actually. I did witness people being yelled at. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I witnessed that in Manhattan actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and that group of that, those groups of people were pretty affected by it. You could tell they were scared and defensive.
Do you remember what the time on the clock was the last time you looked at it before you went to bed that night?
No, I have no idea.
Do you know if you even were keeping time?
I don't remember keeping time. I don't think I probably stayed up until one or so, but I don't. I don't really remember.
Well,
Um,
were you hearing people in the street when you went to sleep?
no, I think most people were inside at that point.
Was
Um,
it easy for you to fall asleep?
no, because there were sirens going almost all night, and there was this incredibly strong smell of all the burning bodies and all the chemicals that were burning as well, wiring and so on. And that smell of, yeah, like basically burning office supplies and burning clothing, all these like weird synthetic artificial chemicals and as well as human bodies, it just kind of like took over the the air. So I didn't sleep too well. Kind of like slept. I think I remember sleeping fitfully.
Hmm. Well, what was it like, and when did the military move in, or just when did the state take control of the streets?
Mm, they took control the next morning, on as I remember it. I'm
Were
not the
you
most reliable source, but the September
We're going off
12th.
eyewitness here, and I'm doing some interesting questioning, so it's okay if you don't remember anything.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally. Yeah, I believe it was the morning of September 12th. I believe that was the first time it became very clear that there was like a strong state presence and they were starting to like control the public space.
did you see troops when you woke up and looked out your window?
I wouldn't put it that way. I did see, I believe it was National Guard manning the tanks, but like we're talking like two, you'd see like two people, maybe three people wearing soldier fatigues, essentially.
So when you woke up, there was people in fatigues on the street.
Yeah, around the corner from me. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
What did you still hear sirens?
Periodically, not nearly as much at that point, but yeah, periodically, yes.
Was there
Uh,
anyone walking around your neighborhood?
yes, there were a few people walking around the neighborhood. People were going out to get food, so there certainly was no delivery, that I remember at least. I went to get food actually. Um,
Where'd
my
you go?
partner, my partner and I, we went to a store that was on the north side of Houston in East Village, and the East Village is like right across the street. I think we stopped at a like a pizza place and got a slice of pizza, and then
Did you talk to the guy at the pizza place?
um no, he didn't. I don't think he. I think he was too busy to have a conversation. But we did get it. We did get our mail because our mailbox was right there, and there was a postcard in the mailbox. We got it, and probably bought something else like magazines, just stuff to read. And we got stopped by the police at the intersection, So there were next to the tank there was New York's NYPD, and they were the ones interacting with the public. So we got stopped by NYPD, and but it was right next to the tank, so I had this like very authoritarian effect. And they're like, you have to be able to prove that you live south of Houston to go south of Houston. We had this postcard that was addressed to our address on the stand just down, 50 yards away. So that's how we got past the tank.
That postcard saved you.
Yeah.
Good thing you checked your mail.
Yeah, really. Really. Yeah.
That's interesting. So that's the 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're getting internet sometime the 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
You're kind of getting access to the world sometime around the 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
Until then, you're just planning and bored.
Yeah, I think it was we're too wired to be bored. Like you could just be sitting on the couch for like an hour and there wasn't really a feeling of boredom because it was a surreal situation. I mean, you could be sitting on the couch for you could be sitting on the couch for 8 hours straight and you would still wouldn't have felt boredom. You would have felt stimulation from this like otherworldly reality that just hit. It was like you needed more than a day to process.
Have you ever experienced that state again?
No, no, I've never experienced anything like that. Not even close.
When did you feel normal again? First feel normal again?
Probably about 3 weeks after 9/11. So probably October.
Where were you?
I was back in the city and work had reopened. Um, but yeah, I was back in my apartment in Lower East Side going to work in Soho.
How long did you do that again before you left?
Um, let's see, 4 months, 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
Why'd you leave?
Um, so the .com boom happened, had happened kind of. Yes, it had happened already. The explosion, I'm sorry, the .com boom collapse had happened, but 9/11 accelerated it. Um, Now, because it had happened before 9/11, this is to permit me a slight digression that I think
Go
is
ahead.
on topic. Um, the company went from 300 people down to like 40 people, right? And it kept making the cut. And at that point, we were almost sold to Deloitte and Touche Wholesale as their digital agency, their digital arm internally. And they're off. We were going to be in the 40th floor of the first tower, the World Trade Center. That's where Deloitte and Touche was. That happened in July. So it was to the
Wow.
point where they actually came in and I was interviewed by Deloitte. They interviewed all of us. They were just going to take all of us. That was the deal. But they wanted to at least, meet the people
Were the
quickly.
people that interviewed you working there
At Deloitte? Yeah.
at the
They were,
40th floor?
yes, they were. That's where their offices were. They were pitching it as a perk or as a, part of the experience of working at Deloitte.
Wow. So July 2001, Deloitte is about to buy your digital agency and is pitching you on the idea of working on the 40th floor of the World Trade Center 1.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. How many
I thought
times did that thought pass through your head?
oh, plenty, plenty. I mean, I thought it sounded kind of cool. I wasn't that into it, but um,
But you
I'd
thought
been
about
up.
the view.
I liked it. I'd been up to the Windows on the World a couple times. I'd been there that summer. I thought it was a. I thought the 40th floor view would be pretty nice as well.
Yeah, I bet it was. Wow. How many times did you think about that after?
Oh gosh, probably uh, a few dozen times over the years. I mean, it's been 19 years, so
Were you thinking of that at all that day?
no, it didn't occur to me that day. I was too focused on what was right around me.
Yeah. It felt too important to panic. I really clung on to that when you said that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it did.
interesting. Um, so you're planning to get out for like 4 days, 5 days.
Hmm.
You get out. Oh, so wait, I don't know if you answered the question actually. So why did you leave New York City? So you said the
Oh,
agency was
oh, right.
downsizing and almost got bought, and then
Yeah. So
was 9/11 nail in the coffin,
the
that kind
nylon
of
was
thing?
nail in the coffin. It was just it was just dreadful. All of a sudden it became like a really dreadful place to live. I mean, it was the ruins were there. Like the ruins were like smoking for what seemed like months, and it just seemed terrible. Like it was just all of a sudden like a depressing place to be. And the it looked like the economy was going to like completely blow up. I mean, it's 9/11 just really put the nail in the coffin of the whole .com thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I knew that I just I was like, let's get out of here. Let's go to Hawaii. Let's like escape to another world that's beautiful and safe, and no one's ever going to attack it out of the way.
That's why you went to Hawaii in particular.
Yeah, yeah. We took our time. We drove across, spent like I don't know 2 or 3 months, kind of just traveling across the U.S. and stopped in Colorado for a bit, California, Eugene. Spent like the summer in Eugene, and then moved to Hawaii.
Hmm.
So
That's interesting that was your decision making. What was your New York experience like in October of that year before you moved? So there's 4 weeks, 3 weeks before you move. What was your New York experience like, and how different was it from that
hmm
to when we first started the conversation in June?
yeah, it was
What was the beat on the street?
it was a little more communal, and it was a little more dead. And those things don't seem to go together, but people were more willing to make eye contact, but people were scared of doing too much, and everyone kind of like was cautious relatively and willing to like look at you relatively. There was a sense of connection briefly, but people were really worried. Everybody was worried, and it was that was the feeling on the street, I think.
The image that you're conjuring in my mind is of a rabbit.
Yeah,
You know, I don't
yeah.
like
People
that
turn into
rabbits will look at
rabbits.
you, but they're always ready to bolt.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. What was your experience like then? So if that's what the tenor of the city is like, how did that affect your mostly communal situation and how you lived?
Mm, I mean, I think it made it bleak, and it made it kind of tedious. Um,
How so tedious?
I guess just day-to-day activities felt just more kind of less enjoyable, and therefore more burdensome, and therefore more tedious.
Hmm. Interesting. What about going to a cafe or going to a spot to hang out? Did you do very much of that after you moved back? And did others?
Yes, but cautiously. Actually, that does kind of remind me of the summer with COVID. Yeah, kind of cautiously, not in as great numbers, but definitely. I mean, it's definitely like part of like the way that you would live. So certainly it would be weird not to do that, I think. So yes, and this is after all. This is when the month long marathon to the Metropolitan Museum of Art happened. Not in October, but a little bit later.
Hmm. So you started doing that right before you left.
Yeah, that was like the last month before we left. I think that was March, March,
Interesting.
March or April. Yeah,
Oh, so
March.
you left in like March or April of 2002.
Yeah, it was March. I believe it was
March.
March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were still worried about terrorist attacks following that.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Um, Absolutely. It still felt like it was a target of the city of New York.
Did you ever feel like you could relax? Or and if not, when was the first time you felt like you could?
I did feel like I could relax in the Catskills. Yes, it did
So
feel
not
like
when you were in the city.
not when I was in the city, but the Catskills are not a target for terrorist attacks, or it didn't seem
Thank God.
so, as far as we know.
Yeah, unless there's some hidden bunkers.
Yeah.
Um, I doubt it. I'm just being cheeky. What from October until March, could you relax in the city at all?
No, not really.
Hmm. What do you feel when you go to New York City now? And have you? I mean, I think you were there a year ago,
Mhm.
right?
I was there a year ago. I was just there a week ago, actually, just briefly for like 10 minutes. Um, I just, I mean, the first thing that hits me is that's just an amazing, amazing human creation always. That kind of supersedes anything to do with 9/11, to be honest. So that's my feeling when I go there. Um, I mean, I certainly do think about it. Um, I look at the new thing they've built, and yeah, I usually look for the skyline just to see how it's different.
So
They
it's
had these
it's. Oh, go ahead.
they had these awful blue faux twin towers for the longest time. Like it must have been almost the whole time I was there. I think after 9/11, those few months, there was
It was like big spotlights.
huge spotlights. Yeah, they weren't awful, but they weren't great either.
Well, it's interesting because I have that image of the spotlights,
Hmm.
but what I'm thinking now is the spotlights with smoke still coming.
Yeah, yeah, the smoke like
Yeah,
flushing
I
out the spotlights.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's
think that was happening.
it had to have been right if it was because I know they put those up fairly not too long after
Not
it's
too long
been
after. Yeah,
and the if it was smoking for several weeks, maybe in a month, 2 months, like yeah,
right, right.
which I didn't know that it was smoking for that long either. That's it makes sense though. I mean, if in order for a building to get hot enough that it melts itself inwards like it did, it probably would be pretty unsustainably. I mean, it doesn't. It takes a lot to get rubber to burn. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
takes a lot to get steel to melt. So
right.
that's a self perpetuating cycle for that has probably a pretty long half life. Um, man, I never heard about the tables coming up, the zombie people, the
Oh yeah.
yeah, no. I mean, I think I mean, I have a very visceral image right now of what that of walking the street would look like, and to see people,
Before I
some
ever
people
saw
angry.
it, yeah. Well, this will add to that image. Before I ever saw a table with the zombies, I saw the zombies just peeking over. So the roof of my office, the westward side on Broadway. This is 1 block north of Canal by the end stop. If you look down, so the trade, the World Trade Center is on Broadway. So it's the main route. So there's a huge horde of people. I'm not saying all of them were like zombified, but certainly there were those that were just covered in white chalk dust.
Wow,
And a
just
lot of
walking
them
down
were
the street.
discombobulated, just didn't really know what was going on. Didn't know which direction to go.
Wow,
Probably
that
lots of people that should be under normal circumstances tended to by medical professionals in some way,
yeah. But when you're
or at
talking
least
about
checked
an
out.
instant catastrophe in the magnitude of thousands, I mean, how
Yeah,
many paramedics do you really have, and how many do you have in a minute capacity?
right,
Um,
right.
wow. Um, That's a very strong image,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I won't forget that.
it was too important to panic. It felt too big to panic. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, yeah,
That's interesting. I
yeah.
everyone, it's interesting. It's 9/11 was a definitely a national trauma, but it didn't I don't think it affected all of us equally, and it couldn't have because of the ways that it happened. And
Hmm.
without a doubt, New York definitely felt the brunt of that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It took me a while to get my head around the idea that it was a national tragedy. It was like, what are you talking about? It was something that happened in New York, and like some freak plane crash at the Pentagon. But I can see why it was. I can see why it was super psychologically traumatic. Just
yeah,
like
flying
COVID. I mean,
before,
COVID
yeah,
doesn't affect me, but
did affect New York City pretty badly too. Again, though, right?
that's true. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. It's
that's
pretty
true.
interesting. Um, what? I mean, I guess was that a marker in your life still? Is 9/11 still looked at,
In my
you know,
life,
yeah,
yeah,
19
yeah.
years later? Is it the milestone marker that you use to judge that epoch of time?
Mm, yeah, I do divide things into pre and post.
You
Yeah,
divide pre and post, not a milestone. You divide things like before and after.
yeah, I do. Yeah, it's yeah. There's highly contrasting worlds. I think for me, at least.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Did the event Was it the event itself that made it contrasting, or was it the zeitgeist within it?
um, the zeitgeist within 9/11, or the
Yeah,
zeitgeist.
the zeitgeist of 9/11. So 9/11 happens. I mean, the world changed. I mean, it's definitely like, I think I can make a pretty strong argument that the world we lived in before and the world we live in after are quite different.
Yeah, yeah. It was because of the zeitgeist caused by 9/11, consisting of um, just fear. Like culture of fear, politics of fear. Yeah, that's definitely. 9/11 was kind of like the for me it was kind of like the end of the 90s, and
Hmm.
the 90s were just it was like this feeling of like massive opportunity and openness and freedom, lack of fear. There's tons of prosperity. There's huge booming economy and new stuff happening. The internet was completely new. It was changing everything. So um,
Did your outlook
yeah.
on the world and the opportunities within it change?
Yeah, actually, they did. I kind of realized that I had more opportunities in a sense because I realized that what had seemed absurd to me, which was to have my own digital agency that I could actually do, and then I actually did create one. It didn't last very long because I moved to Hawaii, but which is just because I wanted to do that more. I was like, I'd rather do this than that. But yeah, it gave me the sense that it was possible to, um, yeah, just kind of a basic, like, possible to start your own business kind of thing. I think on one level, but on another level, it made you think that you don't have to do business the way it's always been done. There's like, even that was still a fairly unusual thing at that time, like that you would, most of the big digital agencies were started by really well connected and probably really wealthy people. And there was a bunch of them in New York City. There's like 10 or 15 of them. And they're all like, it was all like some guy that was just super connected and probably born a multimillionaire and just,
Blew it
launched
up.
this
Yeah.
thing. So
So
it
the
felt like there was a
solo.
little more opportunity for the digital like proletariat,
Mhm.
such as myself, I think. Um, yeah, and I knew the world was messed up and I knew the economy would suffer, but I still felt like there was some opportunity there. There was like some things were changing and you couldn't really count on um just what people have been telling you for the previous few years.
That's really interesting. So you, and I mean, that's beautiful, honestly, that you took that out of it. Because I mean, you're an entrepreneur, entrepreneur now, and
Yeah.
it seems like that was a pretty important marker on the way to get to where you are now and killing it. Um, but also that you saw the opportunity amidst all the chaos, and you didn't get lost in one. You sought the
Yeah.
other, and that's
Yeah.
really
2 3 months 4 months later I was technically moonlighting. I didn't tell my company about it, but yeah, I was in a bank, a Chase bank in Midtown, doing the company formation paperwork and getting the
that's
bank account
great.
with my three buddies.
That's great.
And to be clear, it was a complete failure, but not a complete failure. Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, no, actually, that wasn't a complete failure. I made money that I used to live on in Hawaii, so in that sense, it worked.
That's not bad.
It
No,
just
I
was a
mean,
short-lived. It was a short-lived adventure. Let's put it that way.
that's okay. Most businesses are.
That's true. That's true.
That's amazing. I think I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. This
Yeah,
was
of course. This has been fascinating. Actually, I'm glad to be able to talk at such length on the subject. It's unusual that it happens. People are sore about it or resistant to it for some reason, which is fine. But it's been great.
it's a it's a hard event that caused a lot of other things to happen that is dedicated a day of the year, and it's I just don't think people want to have the time for it. It's
Yeah,
I mean it's not a good thing. It's not like I'm not fascinated with the event of 9/11 because it's a good thing and it's a happy medium. I don't enjoy studying the Patriot Act, but
right, right.
I mean, I don't necessarily enjoy flossing, but I still do it,
Hmm.
you know? And I think this is as important as a thing to keep in mind because of a lot of what you said at the beginning of this, which is a lot of what we're seeing now is a direct result out of actions that happened from a massive traumatic event that you were able to describe as if we were on the street. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah. Thank you. I mean, this was I definitely never. I mean, I'm sure I have put myself to try to put myself in the shoes of there. There was a great 9/11 documentary that was just like
Hmm.
scrape together all of those like handy cams or whatever camcorders and police, whoever had a recorder that submitted it to that project, and that was really great.
Hmm.
But I don't think I quite understood. I always like to start trying to imagine something with what the feeling and the smell is
Yeah.
because it's usually the easiest thing. And right now, like I'm thinking of the smell of soot and how like awful that is. It's like a chemical smell. It's not good.
Yeah, it's
But to
toxic.
see people walking like zombies,
Hmm.
covered in it, without
Yeah.
any answers, no access to
Right.
your phone, no access to anything,
Yeah.
um, and that people started popping up first aid tables,
Right.
and I mean like that. I could imagine why it took 9 months if we're doing the calculation for you to get to Hawaii and have the ability to unpack all of this to be able to really understand what you were seeing when right before the tower collapsed
Right.
and
Right.
understanding like I mean I woke up. I lived in Chicago. I remember
Hmm.
going to school knowing that a plane hit that hit the towers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
You still
remember
went to
we used to.
school?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I went to private school, so I don't think the public schools closed in Chicago, but I
I
went to a
remember that
private
the
school.
Sears Roebuck Tower was thought to be like a target,
I
something
remember
like that.
that. I remember they shut down downtown. I remember they did that like around 11 or so. I remember the
Hmm.
teachers rolled TVs into the classrooms and had the news on. Um,
Right.
And I remember certain things like that, but it wasn't like, it was a scary event and it was something that happened, but I was connected still,
Yeah.
right? Like I didn't like every like when the plane I'll never forget, I was in like history class when the plane hit the Pennsylvania plane went down.
Mm-hmm.
And like they were getting news in and like just everyone stopped and we were listening to it.
Yeah.
Um so like we were getting stuff. But to imagine being 15 minutes walk, 20-minute walk from the
Yeah.
center of this and you're completely disconnected from everything. You don't
Right.
know. I mean, dude, like I'd be getting my paddleboard and I would be paddleboarding across the East River and I'd be getting the fuck out of there. You know what I mean? Like, and because
Mm-hmm.
you're not connected to anything, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I never would have imagined that. It's always going to be harder. The more that I live in the world that I live in now with technology and internet, it's going to be harder for me to imagine not being connected. It is, but
Yeah. That makes sense.
while that is happening, it's even harder still to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If you're ever disconnected now, it might be on purpose, like a fast for a couple of days. That's different than being disconnected in a crisis. That seems pretty unlikely.
Right. And the way that we felt it with COVID now is that there was a absence of information because no one knew anything about the virus,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there wasn't that you weren't getting anything. It's just that you didn't know what you were getting, and there was a deluge
It's
of
like too much bad
nonsense.
information.
Yeah, where what
Much
you're saying is
nonsense.
just right,
Sorry, what's
avoided info. You were saying there's just a void
yeah,
of information. There was
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Man, well, I would love to have you back.
I'd love to be back.
I would love to have you back on several different topics and maybe even just a rolling conversation or something like that. But I
Good.
really appreciate you taking the time.
It's been my pleasure, John. This has been good. It's been good to get this on tape. You know, to have something to reference and maybe even for me to listen to. I'll actually look forward to listening to it.
I am too. Well,
Yeah.
thanks again. Let's wrap in a second, but thank you
Sure.
again, Rowan.
Okay. Thank you, John.